Currently, I'm working at the Tenement Museum, one of the main things that makes New York, New York.
The Tenement Museum is deeply tied to New York City's immigrant history.
It reflects the city's evolution, diversity, and the resilience of those who shaped its identity.
As a personal manager for influencer Prabhat Chaudhary, Sonal Agrawal,
Just copy paste it until it reaches oblivion.
it's always going to be like, you did not do this right.
When you mention the word viral, there are two parts to it. What if it goes wrong?
Traveling, I'm used to
Is there a social media trend that you think is overrated?
a lot of it.
Uh-huh. Something that has to be killed right now. It's too much.
I would say I'm not a fan of those dances, but any of those like trending dances or like trending, I would say I'm not very good at dancing myself. So I think any of those like things that catch on, I'm not a big fan of. Because
Have you seen this trend like day in my life vlogs?
Day in my life, I kind of enjoy watching. I
hate it.
I know it's overrated. I know it's overrated, but I love it because I'm like, okay, like I would want to know what people do, and I genuinely think, do they actually do this on a daily basis? Like, do you actually wake up at 6 a.m, go to the gym, make yourself a smoothie, then go to work? Because I don't do any of that. I wake up at 7. I snooze my alarm 4 times, and then I take a short nap again, and then I go to work. And that's my day in my life.
Probably for the last 2 weeks, I have been seeing this reels in day in my life. I'm like, I'm done with this. and you see a lot of brand integration too.
Yes.
What do you feel about that?
I think it's a very interesting choice to do that because it makes, I know that when I see a video like that, I'm like, I'm curious what kind of supplements they're taking or what gym gear they're using or shoes they're wearing. Because it's subtle integration. And I think with social media, it becomes very possible to do that because we're so used to seeing ads and nobody wants to watch ads. When I know immediately that it's an ad, I skip over it. And I'm sure everybody does that.
Yeah.
But when it's subtly integrated into things like this, like Day in My Life, which I know you don't like, but you would still watch it. You would still watch the whole video and you'd be like, okay, like, let me see what actually this fuss is about. Or let me buy a Stanley Cup maybe, you know? Like, I think you do end up subtly thinking about it and you think like, okay, like maybe I should try it. So I think it kind of works. I think it's a great way of marketing things.
Don't you think it becomes too much when brand just copy paste it until it reaches oblivion?
I think yes. I think I've worked with brands before because I did influencer marketing. So I have worked with brands before and brands always have certain guidelines to things. So I think it's also like influencers might not get the creative freedom to work on certain things and it becomes like the same script that you're following. Because you would see like a few influencers who would have the same partnership and they all have the same script. So I think the creativity gets lost. But I think if done in a better way, it can be, I think, utilized. But yes, I do see a point where it can get a little redundant.
I'm at this point where like I just want to see a day in a life of a bread toaster. Just 2 minutes of pure silence.
Yeah, I should make a day in my life because that would be more genuine.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive in. This is the Pace University playbook.
Oh my God.
It has 3 sections in it.
Okay.
The first is the confessions, then is the hustle, then is the dream big.
Okay.
Let's go through it one by one. Okay? Let me shoot my first question. This is a cheesy one. Dating as an international student, is it overrated, underrated, or is like full chaos?
Oh, I'd say it's chaotic.
Chaotic?
It's very chaotic. It's not easy. Finding connections itself
Not
is
easy.
hard. Finding connections itself is hard. Like making friends is hard. When you're out there in a different place, you want to find more comfort and you're used to certain things. So I would say like finding friends itself is hard and dating becomes like an even bigger challenge because you're trying to connect with these people. It's interesting to know them and to understand like different cultures and different backgrounds that people come from. It's interesting to connect with them, but I would also say it's also a challenge because you don't find the same sense of connection, or you don't find the same sense of, you're not on the same wavelength of certain things. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is just when you go on dating apps, it's just a chaos. It is not fun.
Yeah.
I don't think I know anybody here has a good dating experience on an app, which I don't know. It says a lot. I think we need better dating apps for sure.
Is there an international guy that you have dated? Like,
No.
not from your ethnicity.
No, I haven't. I would be very frank. I would go on dating apps and be put off by something and then not see the dating app for a couple of months. So, no, I haven't even gone beyond the talking stage on an app yet. So,
Good.
it's sad.
That's all right. Yeah. Like, what's one thing you were completely unprepared as an international student? Like, no one has ever warned you about that, but you experience that environment or feeling when you come to New York.
I think for me personally, it has been just a challenge to find a good social circle. I'm not a very extroverted person, so for me, it's a challenge to make friends in general. So when I come from back in India, I have a big social circle. So I have a lot of friends. I have different groups of friends. I have plans every weekend. It's like a big party all the time, you know? But when you come here, it's like, it's different because, like I said, it's hard finding connections. So it's difficult to make friends who you actually connect with. It's difficult finding or making that social circle that you would have back home. So I think that's definitely a challenge that I faced. I did make good friends. I did make connections. I did do hang out with people, but it definitely was not like an easy process to get there.
What's the weirdest or unexpected thing that a client has asked you?
I work in social, and I've always worked I've worked on the digital side of things, and I worked in social media. So I think and I've worked on the agency side of things. So I think the most challenging thing is convincing the client that your ideas work. Because there's always a disconnect between the client, and because they always think of, is the communication getting sent, or is what we're trying to portray getting communicated to the audience, which is true, which is one part of the job. But I would also say that I personally think it's also about aesthetic. It's also about making sure that it works in terms of the platform that you're using, because certain things will work on Instagram, but certain things might not work. That same thing might not work on TikTok. You know what I mean? So I think it's the challenge is convincing the client that what you're thinking and your thought process behind why you chose to do a certain graphic or do a certain communication a certain way might not always be approved by the client. So there's always the back and forth of, oh, maybe we should try this, or maybe we should try that, and that sort of disconnect is always challenging.
I think that happens both ways, right? Client comes up with the idea that you wouldn't like, or you wouldn't like, you know that it will not work.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that with the client?
I think it's the best way to do that is just, I think you need to know where you're coming from and your thought process properly. You need to understand why you're doing certain things a certain way, or why you chose this idea to go ahead with. So you need to understand your concept better so you can convince your client and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should do it this way. That's the hard part. Convincing the hard part. And trying to find a middle ground, because sometimes most of the time, I would say, it's not always that you would get your way with what you think is right. The client always would be like, maybe let's try this, or maybe not do this. So I think it's like finding the middle ground of what works for both would make more sense.
And I think this ties up with my first question. Is there a cultural difference that you felt when you came to New York? Is it your first time coming to US?
It is my first time coming to US. I personally did not find it a very cultural shock. I think, at least I feel like people our generation don't find it that culturally shocking because we were exposed to we're exposed to this environment, right? Like the content we watch, we're exposed to all these OTT platforms, there's Netflix and all of that. So we kind of used to it. We know what we're getting ourselves into. So I don't think I haven't found nothing yet, I would say, has been culturally shocking.
Have you found the Hollywood movies similar to New York?
No.
No?
No.
I always believe that life imitate arts or vice versa. And I think everything that they have shown in the Hollywood movies is very similar, like to be exact match of how New York City is in
I think
real
yes,
life.
like I think in terms of like seeing how it is and like, but I also feel like there was this hype that's like, oh, it's like New York City and like I feel because I come from Mumbai, I can say that Mumbai is equally crazy as New York City. I would say that hands down that New York is crazy as Mumbai is. Do you disagree?
I think Brian knows why I'm giving this expression because I have talked with guests from Mumbai and Delhi. All say that their home city looks like New York. And I'm from Bangalore. I think that New York looks like Bangalore.
I'm sure that any metropolitan city in India does look like the city here.
Yeah.
It's not very different. It's because you're used to like the certain crowd. You're used to the certain, just like the vibe of a city, right? It's very it's the same. Like whenever I come to the city, I'm just like home. You know, like I feel like I'm back home.
Yeah.
So I think I like it. I think
And
it's
New York
great.
makes you make this city as your home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many opportunities and so many people around you. Just I could not say the word survive, but hustling.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the means they have, or as you said, you travel from Edison, yeah, to New York, hustling. And do you think is that 2 hour travel worth it?
Yes, because again, I'm from Mumbai. If anybody is from Mumbai, they know that you have to travel that much. I'm used to it. I traveled 1.5 hour in Mumbai also when I was working.
Yeah, just to give you some context, I've just seen the reels where people hang in the train.
I would say that's the only difference. That, traveling, I'm used to the time period of traveling. The only thing that I would say is here I don't have to like hang outside the train. I think here
I need to cut this out. Okay.
I can sit comfortably in the train. And that's the only I think it's a positive thing that no, but for real, like I think like I don't mind the commute. Like I don't mind how long the commute is. It's a more comfortable commute because I can get work done actually.
Yeah.
I just have to sit and I can
You don't need
watch
to hang.
something. I can watch a whole movie during my commute peacefully, and no one will like, disturb me.
Yeah. So true.
I even sit in the quiet car, so it's even more quiet.
Oh my God. Is there a pet peeve that you have, like if a brand approaches you with something with influencer related stuff, like that annoys you completely?
Not really. Like I think I like the work. I have always been interested in it, but it's interesting because now I'm not doing anything influencer marketing, and whatever influencer marketing I'm doing is very, very different from what I'm used to. So back in India, I did more fashion, lifestyle, travel. So it was very like happy, like fun. It was very lighthearted, and the brands that I worked with were also very.
Can you give me some names of the influencers you worked with
In India,
in India?
All the top influencers I worked with. I have worked as a personal manager for influencer Sonal Agrawal. She's a fashion and lifestyle influencer. I also worked as a personal manager for Prabhat Chaudhary, who he is a male influencer. And we've become very good friends. All of us are now friends. But so mainly it's like fashion and lifestyle. But now, since I started working here, it's mostly historical influencers or influencers who are more into history and who are more professors. Or it's very, very different because it's a more, I would say, more culturally driven influencers that I would say. It's very different, and I think it's interesting to learn more about it. It's interesting to get to know these people and to get to know, just how things work in the city. And it's actually interesting because currently I'm working at the Tenement Museum, and Tenement are like one of the main things that makes New York, New York. And I think it's very interesting how immersed I am in the city's history and the city's culture now. And I absolutely love it.
I haven't been there.
It's very, very interesting. So those of you who don't know, like Tenement Museum is a tenement that was actually people used to live there.
What's the meaning of a tenement?
So a tenement is essentially those buildings that you see in New York where it's basically
Like the brown brick
yes, the
buildings?
brown brick buildings. So those are called tenements. And so this building was actually purchased by the founder of the museum, and they have reconstructed the apartments in the building to look like how people would be living back in the 80s and back in the 90s. So it's a very interesting concept. Everyone should check it out. Doing the marketing for it. but
No problem.
but yeah, I love it. And I think it's interesting because they actually tell you the stories of how people back then who settled in the US would be immigrants, migrants, refugees coming from so there are Jewish families, there are black families, there are Italian families, German families. And I think it's interesting because you get to know the perspective of how it must have been when people moved to the city here, which is quite not different from us as international students when we come from a different country. And I think you find sort of a connection between how people back then moved here and you moving here right now. This, like leaving your home. I think it's interesting to find that sort of connection.
As a student, right now you're in your fourth semester.
Fourth semester, yes.
Yeah. As a student managing and job outside of PACE, how do you try to tie it all together without breaking down?
It was definitely a challenge, but I would say that I'm very lucky that I know I moved here and I immediately moved with my aunt. So
You're saving so much on rent.
I would say that I am very privileged to be able to do that. I know.
Is there a place for one more?
I can ask him. Because I understand that international students have a very different, I would say, experience when they move as compared to mine, because they have to find a house, they have to find people, there's roommate issues.
I'm that guy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, because it's not easy. Rent, you have to cook your own food. There is a lot that goes into it. As a privileged person, I didn't have to.
Yeah,
I have
privileged.
to point out that I am privileged
Very
in that
privileged.
sense.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge it. And I had to move. I moved with my aunt, so I don't have to worry about things like cooking or, cleaning up or like things like that, right? Like a normal international student would. So I think I'm lucky in that sense that I didn't have to worry about that. So all I had to do is focus on studying and working. And I think it's easily manageable I think it's just like managing your time correctly, because I also did an on-campus job. I was a graduate assistant here. So I did that and I did my internship, and then I had my college assignments and stuff. But I think if you manage your time right, I think it can be done. Of course, it's difficult for people who are working and for people who have to
For
go
people
home.
like us.
For people who have to go home
Yeah.
and cook and do everything and do the chores. But I think it can be done. It can be done.
Why did you skip your breakfast though?
I skip my breakfast because I travel 2 hours. Agne.
No.
No, I just tend to skip breakfast, and this coffee has been really good. Anybody wants my order, it's cold brew.
And if somebody is trying to break into social media marketing, is there a skill that they need to master?
Yes. Unfortunately, I think lately, if you see LinkedIn and see the job descriptions, any social media person would have to do copywriting. They would have to know how to shoot content. They would have to know how to edit content. So I think it's just knowing everything that you can do from start to finish. Firstly, I would say you have to be well versed with all the platforms that you're using. That has to be like the number one step. And I think step two would be knowing the trends, knowing what works, knowing how to figure out your marketing strategies and personalize your marketing strategies for each platform. Because I can take, for example, LinkedIn. I can write certain things on LinkedIn that would not work on Instagram or TikTok. TikTok can be more casual, TikTok can be more video friendly. But that might not work on something like LinkedIn. So I think knowing your platforms and knowing what works on which platform is really helpful. And as skills, I would say you should at least know how to use like the basic editing softwares or designing softwares. I know how to use Adobe like Premiere Pro, Illustrator, Photoshop, but it's great that now we have other platforms or like softwares like Canva or CapCut that makes editing or makes just designing stuff
more
easier.
easier. Yeah.
Because I think just knowing the basics is also very important as social media because you don't know when you have to design things. And I think lately it's become a trend that we are social media managers or content creators are expected to know everything. So I think it's easier to brush up on these skills and add it to your portfolio and add that, okay, you know how to use these softwares and you know that you can actually get things done if and when needed.
You also mentioned that we need to be able to know what the trend is at the right moment. Is there anything you use to know the trend? Where do you do your research for that?
I think you just have to use so you have to become
Just use Instagram.
you just have to be you really have to keep using social media.
Social media.
You really do.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to know what is trending, right? Like I can't tell you that just research what's trending because if you don't know, if you're not on the platform, you won't know what's trending.
Wait, when you're using Instagram, do you feel that you're doing something productive?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? You're researching.
It's funny because when I'm working and sometimes I'm on my phone and people are just like walking around me, I have to point out that I'm working on my phone and I'm not just like sitting and scrolling on my app because sometimes you're just like, I would realize that I'm editing on my phone something and I have like 2 hours just like sitting on my phone and then I have to be like, oh, guys, I'm actually working. I'm sorry, but I'm working on my phone.
Actually, this has been the reason for me to use the phone. Like whenever I start using the phone, I feel like, what am I doing? I'm not being productive.
Yeah.
And some thought back in my head comes that, no, this is your job. You have to see the trend. You have to see what is working.
Yeah.
That
But
has
also,
been the
like, I feel like for me personally, because I'm working all the time on social media, I don't go on social media on my personal time too. It's because I'm just like, I'm tired of being on this the whole day. Like, I need a detox day where I'm not doing anything related to social media. But I can't do that because I have to be updated with the trends. I have to know what is trending, what is happening, how I can make use of it, and what kind of content I can use that would actually help get more engagement on the client's page that I'm working on, the brand that I'm working on.
This is off topic. Are you a dog or a cat person?
It's hard. It's hard. I don't know. I have 2 cats at home, so I would say cat person.
Yeah, that makes you a cat person.
I'm a cat person, but I'm also a dog person. I think I'm just an animal person. I could have cats and dogs, live happily ever after.
Oh, cats. I hate cats.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god, we're done with this interview.
I hate them. Brian, do you like them? You like
Yeah,
them?
he
Oh,
likes them.
that makes me the only one in the room. Okay, anyways. You have worked across multiple industries like museum, lifestyle brands, or influencer strategies. What is the biggest change in this? Like, is it the similar strategies you use in different sectors, or there's something else?
No. So I think, like I said, like you can't use the same trend, what I would use on a fashion brand that I would use in the museum. You know what I mean? Like if a song is trending, I can't use that same song on Tenement Museum's page because it's more serious. You know? Like
Can you give me an example for that? Okay, I'll pick you a song.
okay. Let me think.
Okay, from Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us.
Not Like Us,
Yeah.
right? It's interesting because I can make fashion reels out of it.
Yeah,
I can
you can
make like good content out of it.
I think you could also use it for your museum stuff, right?
I wouldn't say so because when you see like the museum's theme and the tonality that they use, it's more serious. It's more it becomes difficult to use like a very I would say it becomes difficult to use song like that on a museum's page. Like it's just not the same what do you call it?
Same context.
It's not in the same I would just say the tonality is very different. Like I would say that when you go to a museum's page, you don't even want to use sounds. You want to use more instrumentals. You want to be more focused on if it's a podcast, you don't want to have things in the background playing, right? Like you would want to focus on what the guest speakers are saying. You would want to focus on more more on the content of what is being spoken as opposed to what music is playing. But certain times, like recently we did a video for Valentine's Day for the museum because that becomes like a theme that you can follow because we did how love looked at in the tenements back in the 80s. So I think like that's something that you can take and pick a seasonal thing like Valentine's Day or Thanksgiving. It's interesting because during Christmas, for example, we did like a whole Christmas themed celebration of how people would celebrate Christmas. But I wouldn't put like a very happy someone dancing in the museum kind of video because it wouldn't fit the tone of the museum. So I think knowing what your brand is and knowing what works and when it works, I think makes more sense than just going along with the trend and putting everything in or mixing it in your brand, which sometimes might not make more sense.
Yeah. I think what I understood from what you said was you have to know the brand tonality and match any content to that,
Yes.
right?
Like understand what your brand is and understand what trend matches your brand because you cannot mix two different things together. You could, but you also have to realize if it actually works with my brand in some level or not. So I think knowing what your brand is and knowing what works with your brand is very important because then you can just go viral for the wrong reasons too.
And also, when you mention the word viral, there are two parts to it. positive and negative. Okay, I know the positive part, that's fun.
Yeah.
But when it comes to negative part, how do you handle it? Because it's very hard to control the conversation about your brand on social media.
Yeah.
Is there any framework that you have before releasing a reel? Like if things go out of hand, how could you manage that?
I think you have to really put some thought behind why you're making certain content, right? It's very easy to go viral for the wrong reasons.
And I think museum content about museum does not come to this section because there will be things that could not make the people offend. Like if you consider a lot of influencer collaboration, that's where this problem comes in.
Yeah. So I think influencers, especially when you focus on them, you also have to pick what influencer works the best for you, right? I cannot be I cannot be like I cannot be a tech brand and use an influencer who has no idea about tech unless you're doing it in a very smart way. You know
A
what I mean?
sarcastic way.
Yeah. So I think you need to understand again what your brand is and select people who work best with your brand.
Yeah, what if it goes wrong?
I think then damage control is
Yeah.
really important too, because you need to know if for certain reasons you've seen it before that people have used influencers and collaborated with certain people and then it has gone wrong. I think also knowing damage control, taking responsibility for it, putting out the right message at the right time is very important, because and you also have, I feel like sometimes brands might do something that might get them negative publicity for some reason. They might just ignore it. I think it's important to not ignore it. It's important to acknowledge it. It's important to talk about it and apologize for it. If you think you've actually done something that has offended people or has been wrong in certain way, I think it's best to take or acknowledge it, I think, and do proper damage control.
Have you ever been in this situation?
Thankfully not.
Hopefully
and I
never.
hope I never have to be. I really hope I don't have to be. But you know, like whenever you work with any brands or anything on social, there's always going to be negative comments. There's always going to be like, you did not do this right. We were so unhappy with
You cannot
your-"
satisfy everyone.
Yeah, you cannot.
Yeah, you cannot.
You have to be like, oh, like that's just comes with your job. And I think it's also like how you reply to those comments, how you reply to those messages also matter. And also it would be great if you can convert that negative into something positive, you know?
Yes.
And I think that's very important, to actually listen to why someone might have been unhappy with the product you used or might be unhappy with the brand you used, because it happens that you might have actually messed up and you made someone unhappy for some reason. But I think listening to why that went wrong, and I think getting that feedback and making sure that you actually learn something from that feedback is also important.
Cool. Let's move on to the final segment. Big dream. Like, were you always interested in digital marketing, or is there something you stumbled upon?
I stumbled upon it. Frankly speaking, I was a
Thank you for being frank.
I really did.
yeah.
I struggled initially with finding what I really wanted, because I was a finance student. I was studying to be a CA, and it was very, very different from what I'm doing right now. And
Those are two opposite
they're
poles.
very opposite, very, very opposite. So I was studying to be a CA. My trajectory with my career has been insane, because I was very confused as a student, because I wanted to do so many different things, but I wasn't finding the right choice for me. So I was starting to be a CA. I was a finance student. And I realized quickly on that this is not something what I want to do. I did not enjoy it. I hated it. And I was like, okay, like, let me take a pause from this. I stopped studying that. I just did my BCom. And I was like, I wanted to study fashion journalism. So again, that became like, again, very different. So I was like, let me study fashion journalism. But instead of just studying fashion journalism, I was like, why don't I just study journalism and then go into different aspect of it? So I did my master's in communication and journalism in India. And during my master's, I just applied for this job. This was the first job I applied for. I got the job. It was a startup at a digital agency. And
That was my next question. Like in US, being an international student, able to get a job is a very good feat. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So, what are the strategies you use for that?
I think I had experience. I have 8 years of work experience working in digital. So I think that definitely helped. I built my resume, I built a portfolio, I built everything that I worked on. But I think what really helped is so PACE has this community internship program, which is for different fields. I think marketing, IT, I'm not sure, I think tech, finance. And I applied for an internship through the program. So I think that helped. And I think because they must have thought that my resume fit their description well, I got hired for that internship. And that's when I started working at the Tenement Museum. Sorry. That's when I started working at the Tenement Museum. And it then I think like it's just I think it's your work ethic, and you have to constantly, I think it helps when you're working an internship, and if you give your 100%,
Yeah.
it really helps because internships often convert to jobs.
Full-time jobs.
Yes. And for me, that internship converted into a job opportunity, and I started doing part-time at the internship at the museum. So my internship ended, and then they offered me a part-time position because I'm an international student, so I can only work a certain hours. And they hired me to do 20 hours then. And then this was during fall 2024. And then they extended to a winter extent. Then I got a winter extension. And now I got a spring extension. So I think like that helps knowing that, okay, like you're doing a good job at your internship. So finding internships and trying to do as many internships as much as possible really like is a good avenue for conversion into a full-time position or a part-time even, to get that, at least to get that work experience on your resume.
Yeah.
Really helps, you know.
Yeah. And also, when did you start applying?
I applied, so I did not work in the first fall. 2023 was my first semester. So I did not apply then, but I started applying in the spring. And I applied for a summer internship. So I got
So
the
you
summer
basically started during the months of January.
January. So I think you can immediately start. I think like I delayed it a little because I think the first few months you're still getting acclimated to everything. So I did not do that, but I think it's a great to just start immediately to get internships because there are part-time internships, and as international students you can work part-time. So I think as soon as possible, I would say immediately start if possible to get internships, get as many internships as possible, and do summer internships, work during your when you're working, when you're in school. I think that helps. And I personally did a summer internship. So I started in Jan. I would not even say Jan. I started in April and I applied for this position.
And also, I think your 7 years of experience really helped to grab that job.
I would say so because it was a social media job and I worked in social media. So I think when I had my interview with my managers, I think telling them my work experience back home and my experience with managing social media, managing a team of people, I think that definitely gave me more leverage in getting the job. But I would also say that it doesn't matter how much work experience you have when you're working here. You know, like it of course counts to a certain degree, but I think it's also the skills that you show them. It also helps to tell them that these are the internships you worked at when you moved here and this is what you're good at. I think that helps. And I think I know friends who've gotten internships who don't have as much experience as me, but who are really good at what they do. So I think that also helps a certain way. So I think it's just how you portray yourselves, what skills you add, what certifications you take, what kind of softwares you know. I think that all of that helps with your resume.
Did you know anyone in the Tenement Museum before you applied?
No, none at all. Like this was my first time applying.
So basically, you got the job all based on your resume.
Yes. So I wanted to work for nonprofits, which is why I applied at the museum. It's because the community internship programs is mainly focused on nonprofit jobs. So I applied for it, and I think my interview went great because we spoke for a good like an hour, and I think like they liked me, and then they gave me the position.
I think that's something interesting. You really want to work with a nonprofit company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's something that going forward, I'm mainly applying for nonprofit jobs because that's something I'm interested in. Again, it's very different from what I was doing.
Because a lot of people, a lot of international students just want to get a job. And I think when you have a passion like that, it really resonates with somebody you're interviewing for, someone.
Yeah.
So when that passion comes across, it's easier to get a job.
I think so because it's something I really want to do. That was one of my reasons for doing a master's too, to get that international exposure, so I can do nonprofit jobs. I know my work experience is very, very different from what I want to do because I've always worked in luxuries. I've always worked.
What's your ultimate dream job?
To work for a very good nonprofit that I think is actually making a difference to someone's life. I would say that for me personally, again, social media, when you're on social media so often, you see a lot of negatives on the platform. And that's something that I want to work towards, that I want to actually market or do marketing into something that's actually benefiting other people.
Sakshi, if I meet you in next 10 years, what will you be doing?
I hope that I will be working, I don't know, as a social media manager for some animal conservative program or like climate change or
some
like
cat conservative.
cat conservative or for climate change.
What's the name of your cat?
United Nations. I don't know. I'll be working for the UN probably. I hope. But I think my cat's name is they're my cousin's cats. One is Basil and one is Chia.
Which one do you like the most?
I would say Basil. I like them both, but I'm closer to Basil because she's closer to me. Chia doesn't like me a lot.
Okay, in the next 10 years when I meet you, probably New York?
Probably New York. I chose space specifically because it was in New York. So I think I like New York. And like I said, it feels like home. It feels like Mumbai. So I think I really like living here. So hopefully.
So when I meet you in the next 10 years, you want to be working for a big non-profit as a social media manager.
Yes.
Great.
I hope so.
And I always want to wrap up my show with this question.
Oh God.
Is there anything you regret that you have not done in PACE?
Made friends.
Yeah.
I would say PACE has so many great things in terms of networking, and PACE has so many. I really like. PACE has really good networking opportunities. PACE has really good events. I feel like the one regret now that I'm in my 4th sem and I don't have to come to college as much, I feel like I should have spent more time being in the university, actually enjoying things. Because I would just like come in and go, and there'll be like an event happening. Like today, there's Valentine's Day, and there was some like the whole Valentine. I just like walked past through it, and I was like, oh God, I should like go.
You should go.
I should go and like
we'll go
get some cupcakes. Yeah.
Just
I think
you
like
missed out making friends.
I missed out on like enjoying. I think I realized that I would not get to be in college anymore or be in school anymore. I think I've kind of just not utilized the experience as much as I would have liked to, even though I was given the opportunity to. I think that's something I regret, that I wish I did more.
Yeah, there's pros and cons for it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you back.
Okay.
Back off camera. Okay, cool. Thank you everyone for tuning into another fantastic episode. Meet you in the next one.